Hi, everyone. Welcome back. We got a special guest in here today. This is Gregory right here, and he's been doing a great job online in terms of content creation and showing people just the side of taking motivation, taking that first step. And in a world where people are really hesitant and people are really trying to figure their life out, this person is in that process right now. And I think one of his best things that you'll get a chance to see here in this interview is his ability to believe in himself. And so, please welcome none other than Greg from PH Creations.
Thank you, sir. I'm Gregory Hoddle here, and that is kind of what I am all about. I'm just trying to show everybody that if you have the right attitude and really truly believe in yourself, the sky's the limit, man.
Right. And I think one of the things in life is that development, right? And so there's a lot of times where people in the environment you got to have to develop in yourself in terms of some habits or hobbies or interests and stuff like that. And so I kind of wanted you to comment on the importance of development as well. What do you think?
Yeah, so that's so important, right? Because a lot of people have an idea of what they need to do and what they are supposed to be doing and stuff, but they're not surrounding themselves with the right, say, network or the right mindsets or say down people, right? And that is such a huge impact on being able to really find yourself, right? If you're around people who are just negative and just down all the time, well, then that's going to solely impact you, and you're not going to be able to think, okay, well, what can I really do to grade myself? Because you're too impacted by your environment, you know?
And so, do you have any advice for someone, let's say looking at like a skill or looking at the environment or just maybe opening your eyes to something new in the development? Is there something that if someone needs to develop on something, is there one facet they should focus on first before they kind of get into the others?
Absolutely. So what I would suggest is just find a mentor and find somebody who's doing exactly what you're wanting to do and just base everything off of that. Right? And they will guide you. They will show you what you need to learn. Say you want to get into sales, they'll learn how to teach you how to talk properly. If you want to get into, say, modeling, they'll teach you how to get again, present yourself properly. So it's really about, again, who you bring yourself around. And that is such a huge thing. And that was what happened with me. I wanted to get into sales and more business side of things outside of trades. And I found someone who had a business, who needed a salesman. I had no prior experience. I just threw myself in and grabbed my mentor, and he taught me everything I know now.
That's amazing, man. And
Yeah.
sometimes I guess it's kind of setting yourself up, but also taking advantage of the opportunity. I think some people, from what I see, is sometimes people shy away. So how important is it to not shy away and take that first step, you think?
It is so important, man. If you don't take the first step and start going in that right direction, then you're never going to like get out of the rut. You're going to stay in your typical life, and you're never going to go anywhere. You have to find what your first step is, because until you actually think about it, a lot of people don't even know what that first step is. You know what I mean? So, yeah.
And I think one of the other things that people tend to have is that doubt, like you mentioned, where you don't even know what you want to do yet. So it's really important to kind of know what you do. What would you say is some advice you'd have for someone that they're kind of in that where they know they don't like their 9 to 5, they know they don't like where they're at, but they don't even know what they want to do? Because there's people like that out there too, right? And what should they do? Is it the mentor? Is it maybe having a sit down with yourself and maybe writing down, brainstorming? What would help, you think?
Well, brainstorm would be a good start, but just trying things, like really anything. So really think about, okay, what's something I've never done that is a really successful trade or a really successful business? And okay, that interests me. Or I've always liked video games, or I've always liked, say, in snowmobiling, right? So find something in that niche where you're like, all right, I could get into that if it's involving this. Right. And then that opens up a little bit of room for you. It's a little bit of an umbrella. It's like, okay, well, say again, sales, I'll refer to that. It's like, okay, I like to sell stuff. Okay. I like to talk. Okay. What do I like to talk about? What should I get into? And then from there, the sky's the limit, right?
What did you notice kind of about yourself that you did really well? Like something that in your personality or maybe your habit, or what is it that you think you do well?
Resilience, man, is just never giving up, regardless. Again, if it's something I like to do, because like I'm telling you right now, I don't like to get up at 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock in the morning and go run for a kilometer and then come back and sit on my laptop for 16 hours. I really don't like to do it, but it's what I need to do. Right. And it's what I've been told again by multiple people, even people who hate me. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, you just never stop. And it's like, well, if I stop, then who's going to kick me in the butt? You know,
Right.
it's like the resilience is one of my favorite things about myself. And like, not on a cocky level, but it's like, if you can't beat yourself, then you're not beating anybody else, because you got so much competition out there. Right. So yeah, it's the resilience, man.
Where does that come from, Greg?
I really think it's from my parents. Like, both of them, they were both young single parents, and they just worked. My father worked 70-hour weeks on a farm as a single dad to raise me. And I was out there working with them at 2, 3, 5 years old. And it just always be busy to produce something, right? If there's always some result you can make, then make it, right? Like, and again, it's about the little wins. You know what I mean? It might not be like a big thing to everybody else or a big thing you can share to the world, but it's the little wins, right? Like, again, landing a first deal, or again, getting your first roof shingled, or fixing your first snowmobile and the client's happy, right? Like, it's that little wins will turn out to be the biggest thing forever.
That's amazing, man. Yeah, some
Yeah.
people need to start counting their small success steps. To be honest
Yeah.
with you, and you're so
That's it.
caught up on the big goal. Was there something that you learned as a child, or maybe in your teens, like an advice or something that someone shared with you that's always stuck with you that you can recall?
Yeah, that's a good one. And yeah, man, I've had lots of advice, but the one is, again, to just believe in you, because nobody else will, right? It's like, that's simply it. It's because at the end of the day, nobody's gonna really care. Like, people will say they care, and people will again say like, "Oh, it's okay," and they'll listen to you talk and stuff. But at the end of the day, you're looking at yourself in the mirror, and you only have to be accountable for yourself, right? And that was something I was told at like 11, 12 years old by a teacher. And my first school I ever went to is just like, if you can't own up, say, to a mistake or to anything that is going on, then you're just going to be avoiding things your entire life. Go straight on, and then there's no other way to go about it, right? And then if you fail, oh well, okay, what can I do next? You rearrange what you did and you go about it a different way. So it's like, just be you, and just don't lie. That was the biggest thing. That, again, it goes in the same kind of concept, but like, yeah, don't lie and be true.
And lying is from what I'm assuming, lying is a big thing nowadays. And
Oh yeah.
and people need to be more transparent. I think there's a lot of benefit in it. And so when you now in what you're doing, let's say in you being forthcoming and honest,
Yeah.
what kind of opportunities present itself from being honest, do you think?
Well, it'll shock you, right? So for myself, being honest about like, when I was honest, it's like when I quit my 9 to 5, that was an honesty moment for myself, because I'm like, my bills are getting taken care of, everything's good, I'm making money, but I'm really not happy. You know, and again, I don't drive on feelings, right? Like, again, I'll do what I got to do regardless of how I feel. But it's like, if you can't enjoy what you're doing on the regular basis, or enjoy where you're going, then it's kind of useless, you know, if that makes much sense, right?
Certainly.
Yeah.
And then I wanted you to comment on that. That was a really good point. Is you don't go off of feelings. Can you explain that?
So I don't do anything on how I feel, right? If I'm, say, not having the best time, or again, because my ex-wife, or I'm going through anything, I'm still going to do exactly what it is I need to do. And when you just get into that mode, it's like nothing's going to stop you, right? It's like, okay, I feel like doing nothing, but I'm going anyways, right? I don't want to go to this meeting, but I have to. Right? Like, if you don't take one day off, you're not going to miss your lucky day, right? Because there will be a lucky day for everybody, but if you don't miss a day, you're not going to miss your lucky day.
Yeah. It's just making me think, because there's a part of the brain, right? It's called the anterior mid-cingulate cortex, and so to summarize, basically, is they found that one of the ways that this part of the brain grows is, first of all, this part of the brain is responsible for problem solving, social skills, and some other management capabilities. And so they realized that this part of this brain can actually grow. And they realized that the only way this part of the brain can grow, only one condition, is if the brain does something it doesn't want to do. That's the only. And they did more research into this, and they found that people that have really high anterior macingulate cortexes are people that are really older, people that lost a lot of weight, and top athletes. And so it just makes me think that people might think, well, why do I want to do it? Like, what's the purpose of doing? Aside from having your goal, it's also just good for your development, like we talked about as well, right?
Yeah.
And kind of want to also touch on the fact of your determination. And I know you talked about your relentless ability. Is what are you thinking? Like right now, you know, we're both in a situation we're trying to figure things out in life, but what are you thinking right now? Because it seems like I don't think you're thinking right now so much of the present. You're thinking so much ahead into your future, and you're thinking what's kind of your thought process and your mentality right now?
So the way I'm thinking about it is, I have my kids I'm trying to get back, and that's what I am. And I want to provide a life for them that there's no struggle, that you have everything you want. You got to work hard for it. And I want to be able to enjoy everything with them. And I want to be able to teach them those things. And with what I'm trying to do and the business I'm trying to build, I'm going to be able to provide that for them. And that is my main focus, is those two kids. And at the end of the day, there's really nothing else that's driving me. Like I have a little picture beside my laptop that's glued to it, and I always look at it. And I'm like, all right, soon. And it might happen tomorrow, or it might happen in 2 years, but it will happen because it's in my hands, right? And that's what's driving me, right? And of course, the success, everything. It all comes with, again, the life. Everybody wants to have that life, but I'm not really thinking of it like that, right? I'm thinking of it, it's like, okay, now I can provide better. I can take care of my family better. And there's no other answer for that. It's just strictly my kids.
That's amazing, man. Yeah. And I think a lot of people hesitate in following their dream once they start to have kids. And because I feel like some people's dreams die as you get older as adults. So what happens that you think, like from what you see from the outside looking in, is what do you think happens to these people? Why do they? Is it just because they get scared even more? Is it more of an excuse? What do you think?
A comfort thing. I feel like it's like, okay, I got to get comfortable. I have to be stable. I have to, again, get the 9 to 5. I have to be home every night to help with the kids. And I had the total different approach about that. When before I had my kids, I just had a simple fast food job. And then when I had my second, I'm like, all right, it's time to do something big. And that's when I got into roofing and then started doing side jobs and working 17, 18 hours a day. Like I'd come home around 10 and I'd be out the door by 4. So I remember for 27 days, I didn't see my kids once, and I was living with them. I was living with my ex-wife and nothing was wrong, but just because I'm like, this has to be better. And a lot of people don't do that because they're just scared they're going to lose too much. You know what I mean? They're like, okay, if I don't do this, I'm not going to be a good parent, or I won't be a good spouse because I'm not spending time. Well, at the end of the day, especially as men, you got to provide. Like there's time, like teach the lessons, or you got to teach that only a man can teach a son. But like at the end of the day, you got to be working hard for those kids because they'll recognize that, right? Like even my oldest, because he was older when that all happened, he's just like, he'll tell you, like I was proud of my dad because he was coming home, he could hear me, like again with my tools dragging across the floor. He would say hi and I'd be like, give him a hug and kiss. And he'd be like, good job, dad. Good job, dad. And he was only 4 at that point, right? But like it was those little things. It's like, all right, like I'm doing proper. Like he needs his mom to do certain things, but he needs me to do other things. And those roles that we were doing really well with. And the kids recognize that. And again, people will hesitate, right? Like,
right. And just for the people that don't know, is you talk about farm life with your dad. So just talk about kind of your childhood. First of all, like where are you from? And the farm life, and just kind of talk about your upbringing.
Yeah. So I grew up outside of a little town called Bond Head. Like we're talking like you blink, you miss it type thing. And yeah, it was me and my dad was from newborn all the way up till about 7. And he had me in hockey. He had me in soccer. I had my first snowmobile at 4 years old. Couldn't even drive the freaking thing. Like and learned how to skate in the backyard type thing, right? Like it was a really cool experience, right? Like, and I loved that farm life, but circumstances changed and we ended up moving to a little town called Alliston, and that's where I spent my teenage years and stuff. Still, went into hockey, and that was really it: hockey, snowmobiling, and going to school a little bit. But it was just, again, having all those experiences. And then at like 10, I was working on my own snowmobiles, and then older, it got even better, right? Like that was really what it is. My dad taught me the value of hard work, and you get stuff to reward it, right? And that was it. Like my whole childhood was filled with hard work, but a lot of fun. A lot of fun. And I give that to my dad 100%.
And it goes back to what you were talking about, exposure, right? And so you were exposed to to learn about hard work, determination. And sometimes you don't just go to a store and get these nice qualities. You kind of have to inherit it a lot of times through struggle, right? And
certainly.
And how important is exposure to people? Like some people, for example, you mentioned a really good point of getting a chance to go out there, try new things, and expose yourself to these environments. For someone that's, let's say, in the city or someone living in a small town, what can they start off with? Is there maybe things that, because I never even thought about snowmobiles, for instance, or roofing.
Yeah.
It's just, what is some resources people can use? I know you talked about mentors and exposing yourself. Yeah. Is there anything you suggest that people that might not have these direct exposures?
Well, yeah, because I had the hard work, but all the real jobs I got were on myself. And it was make a spreadsheet and just start going. And out of one person, they'll believe in you. Like I remember, again, my first job, it was at Zehrs. I grabbed my resume and I just started going to every single spot. It was like I had no idea what I wanted to do. I was a 15-year-old kid, right? But I wanted to do something. I wanted to make money. So it's just the effort of doing, right? Like organize yourself. And then I happened to one day fall into a roofing, and I didn't want to be a roofer. Like I didn't want to be a roofer, but I saw the angle in it, and I'm like, okay, there's good money if you stay out of trouble and you keep your head on your shoulders, get with a good crew. And it took me a couple crews to find that crew. Sometimes you got to walk away. Like you might love something, you just might have to, I can't be in this. And you got to trying is just so important, right? And it just fell. Like it didn't fall in my lap in a good way, but it fell in my lap. It was like, all right, this is an opportunity. I can succeed in this. It's not it's physically hard, but mentally it's not. So I can understand it. Let's just try it.
Certainly. And is there something that you would want your kids to experience in life? I know you went through a lot of interesting things in life. Yeah. Is there something that it may not have always been the best for you, but it was something that really helped you in your character and your development? Is there something that you wish that your children go through as well to learn?
That's an awesome question. Not so much a struggle, because I want them to struggle, but more to, like, in a sense, like I want them to have a problem and don't know how to deal with it, struggle with that problem, and then come up with a solution. Right? I don't want them to ever have to go through some of the things that I had to go through. I would never dream that on them. I'll dream that on nobody. But at the same time, they did build that character. So it does take a person to fall and land on their face a bunch of times to get up and realize what they're doing wrong, but only to an extent, right? Like, again, there's certain things you just never wish your children to go through, but you want them to be stronger, right? Like, again, a kid push them over in the snow, right? And the kid walks away. Like, well, that's life, son. Stand up. You know what I mean? Right? I'm almost 30 and I'm still getting pushed over every day, right? And that's just part of life, right? So those things, but again, like when it comes to, again, stuff with my parents or separation with my ex-wife and stuff, they're going through that already. right? So it's like that's going to help build that strength for them. That's going to be like, I'm out here, right? I don't know who I can trust. Like, I have to just be a man. Again, at 8 years old, my son's having this conversation with himself. It's like, I got to be a man. I got to focus on myself, right? Because the same time it happened to me. I was 8 years old when my parents separated too. So it's kind of weird.
Yeah, it's kind of ironic that it happened at the same age for your son. So,
Right.
was there something that kind of helps you kind of cope and get over that? Because it's a very devastating thing to go through, right? With the parents separating. Was there something that helped you get over that as a kid?
It was just sports. I ignored it. I didn't really ever like. I never really got over it until I was just able to be like, I'm not going to let that affect me anymore. It was just a choice. Kind of use it as a crutch through my teenage years when I got into a little bit of trouble and stuff. But no, it was just kind of like, this ain't an excuse. Like, what happens to you is not what you do, right? Just because something happens to you doesn't mean you have to live in that, right? You can totally transform that.
And that's really important, by the way, is people need to let go of that past, even if they were a victim of that past. In order for them to kind of benefit from it, you really need to let go of it. And I couldn't agree more, man. So it's a tough thing to go through, definitely, like you said, but it's one of those things you have to fix yourself in order to kind of get over. You got to heal yourself. And was there something that you actually changed your perspective? I know we just talked about this, but just in general, was there something you recently learned that really changed your way of thinking and your approach on doing things nowadays?
It wasn't, I wouldn't call it so much something happened. I was left with no choice, right? I was left with like, I have to do something, and or I have to make an outcome of this, or I'm just going to be a loser. That's really what it was. It was just like, I have zero choice. I have to become great, because if not, then I'm going to have nothing that I wanted. And I was walking back from work. I got dropped off after a 14-hour day walking through the snow. And it was like, no, man, I have to change, right? Because like, if not, I'm going to be 30 years old still doing this. Because I got into some trouble, lost my driver's license a couple years back. And it was just, oh my goodness. I'm like, this is it. Like, it was just one of those moments. And I remember I walked in and I was on my online university, but I was kind of not doing much. And I sat down on my laptop and I didn't get up for 16 hours. And I'm like, okay, this is it. Right. And that was that transform.
Wow.
Like, pretty much pinned in a corner. Like, do you want to be nothing, or do you want to be better than that? And it was like, okay, time to make the choice.
It's literally out of desperation. Like, you have nothing else at that point. And that's amazing, man. 16 hours. I can't imagine just 16 hours.
That's still rookie. That's rookie numbers, buddy.
What are you doing now, man?
Well, I remember our first conversation there. I was going off to 38 hours straight. 38 hours straight. And again, a lot of coffees, a lot of Tim Hortons. Right. I think I just had like, the Take 12s. Yeah. I bought 2 of those and I brought them with me, and I had the microwave, and I just, and I kept going. And by the end of it, I slept for a long time.
You caught up on it, right?
Yeah, buddy. Because it's like, when the moment's there and when you're in the groove, right? You don't want to stop, right? Because there's always more work to do, right? Like, you can relate to that. It's like, if I shut my eyes, then I might miss something, right? And that's what gets me constantly, is like, I'll refer this to cryptocurrency that didn't happen too long ago. A coin got released, and while I was sleeping, okay, that time I only slept for 4 hours that night, but as I was sleeping, a friend of mine put $1,000 into this coin when it got released, and he woke up and he had $37,000 in his bank account because he wasn't sleeping, but I was sleeping. Wow. So that really bugged the heck out of me, right? Because I was like, ugh. So it's constant, but of course you need rest, but it's very not as necessary as many people say. Like, successful people don't sleep 8 hours a day. You know what I mean? Right.
And it kind of goes into it's the opportunity thing we talked about earlier, is you got to capitalize on the opportunity when it comes to
it.
And so, just for people that don't really know is when we're talking about your work. I know you said content creation. What
Yeah.
is some of the things that you're exploring now, and some of the things you're doing?
So I kind of have two angles to my business. So my one is content creation, my motivational channels, just showing my experience and everything. And then the other side of it is contacting businesses and so like hotels, restaurants, cafes, really any business that you see that doesn't have such a strong social media presence. And I'm in a course for social media management. So I'll go up to them and be like, "Hey, I saw your business here. I made this 30-day content calendar. You have so much potential to having a greater amount of sales, more traffic, more click-throughs, which brings in more profits for you. Let me take your social media for 14 days for free. I'll do it for free for 14 days. And if we see a bit of an improvement by the 14 days, then it's in your hands if you want to continue to work, or or I can just say, okay, there you go. You continue off with where I left off. And usually they won't do that because again, they would have done it to begin with. You know what I mean? So that's one side of it as well. And then another side of my business is I'll contact Airbnbs and hotels directly and offer to produce their content for them. And they just manage their own social media. So I'm just strictly will be producing the content for them. Show up on site, take my pictures, do a video, whatever package they decide they want to do, and then do that for them, fulfill it, edit, make my edits, send it to them, send them an invoice, and that's about it.
Is there in that field, Greg? Is there an industry or market that you'd like to look into? For example, hotels, food, maybe some other regards, venues. Is there something that you want to get into more than the others?
Yeah, the culinary, hospitality section is where I'm really specifying. Like that's what I'd call my niche. Is I'm really going after restaurants, cafes, and hotels because usually they're kind of almost all together. Right? There's a lot of places that have a hotel with a bar or a hotel with a cafe or something in that regard. So that is really more where I'm going at, but or Airbnbs. That's a massive one that I've been really successful with so far and having a lot more communication with people because it's directly right on your phone, right? It's no email. So I can send them my pitch right through the app and they get it. They either ignore it or they want to go forward. And I'm like, hey, how can I contact you? Send your email, and then you go from there.
Right. It's more live. Yeah. And you're talking about what's really important is proof of concept. Is like taking that risk of giving something for free, which is your work. And I think one of the things is people need that proof of concept where they just need to see your work at that point. And so why are you choosing, or why did you choose the culinary and the whole Airbnb and hotel? Is there a reason why you prefer that more than the others?
Yeah, so that just was the recent switch for me about a month ago when I quit my 9 to 5 is when I got into that because I saw that potential. It's a never ending business. There's always going to be hotels, restaurants, right? And people are always going to be spending money there, right? Like indefinitely. And before I was in the power sport niche, like snowmobiles and dealerships and stuff like that. And I was stuck. And like, as much as I love that stuff, I didn't feel the fire. Like I was just like, I'm kind of doing it because I know I'll be successful one day. And I just wasn't into it. But then once I read a book. It's called The Sleepy Millionaire. And a year ago, this lady, she was sleeping on her friend's air mattress in her room. And 12 months later, she's made $200,000 traveling, just strictly making the content for hotels and Airbnbs. So she made a book about it. I bought the book, read it in 12 hours, and was just like, that's it. Like I could do that. That's so like the concept is with the skills I'm learning from my university to that, it's like, oh my God. And I was already traveling for work, staying in hotels at work. And I'm like, boom. Okay. So that's where it changed for me. It was like, okay, hotels, restaurants, cafes, that business is not going out of sale anytime soon. Right.
Certainly, man. It's just amazing is that taking that aha moment and capitalizing off of it. And is there to kind of help people save time in that process of learning yourself, is there any advice you have for people when you're taking that first step and kind of figuring it out on your own?
It's like find where you belong, and then and don't hesitate, right? Like because there's, again, as we've discussed, there's people who will hesitate, and when you get into something like that, you can't stop, because there's so many people out there, especially in my personal field, that have been doing this for 5 years since, again, social media started popping, and it's already been an established thing. So you're up against so many people that, again, aren't sleeping, they're working 18 hours a day, and they're already making $200,000 or $500,000 a year, and they're outperforming you. They're doing all the things that you're not doing. So what I would suggest for people is, if you're trying to start something like how I'm starting, for example, find the 5 things that you would do that you're not doing, but you would do if you could, and focus on those 5 things. Because one of those 5 things, you start with that first thing, the next are going to come, and then that third thing, and then the fourth thing, right? It's a trickle effect. So it's like, you got to find where you belong.
Certainly, man. Wow.
Yeah.
By the way, I'm gonna to pause the interview right now, because we only got 5. Can you believe that we just talked for like 35?
That's wild.
Time flew like that, man.
Yeah.